Welcome to another episode of 40 Minutes in the Old Testament. 40 Minutes in the Old Testament is a 1517 Podcast Network podcast. You can go to 1517.org/podcast and check out all the other podcasts that are living over there. And while you're over there, make sure you check out everything else that 1517 is doing. A lot of other podcasts, articles, events, videos. Hey, you can get the Bible in 1 year. You can take, 5 academies. You can do a lot of stuff over there, so make sure you check it all out. And while you're checking all that stuff out, of course, visit that donate page if you want to become a contributor. Help us keep all of that stuff, all that content that I just mentioned, free. You can do that by becoming a contributor. Thank you very much to those of you who already do that. Chad, we are in Isaiah chapter 30. We got through partially through a section that the header says the Lord will be gracious. And when the Lord is going to be gracious, he's going to do some rescuing, some delivering, some saving, and we were going into all that. Now, also what sometimes happens when the Lord is being gracious to you and rescuing you, sometimes that means that somebody else is getting the reverse side of that. And Isaiah is going to explain how some of that's going to look as well.
Yeah, of course, if we're saved, that means that we're in some peril, right? If we're rescued, we're in a spot that is not safe. So when God rescues and saves, there's always a twofold thing happening. I mean, you got this all over the Old Testament. The one that pops immediately into my mind is the Red Sea. Israel is saved at the Red Sea. They are rescued. And also at the same time, those who created the situation in which they needed to be saved were destroyed. So it's going to be here, it's not going to be the Egyptians and Pharaoh. It's going to be the Assyrians, who are going to be mentioned by name in verse 31. So we got a couple verses of poetry. If you're looking in your Bible, you'll see that's laid out a little bit differently in 27 and 28 as opposed to 29 and following. And I don't know why the prophets seem to do this, but they do this quite a bit. They'll slip into poetry, and then they'll go back to prose, and they'll go back to poetry and prose, kind of back and forth. But I'll read 27, 28. This is a storm motif that Isaiah is using, which, of course, is a very common way in which the Old Testament describes the showing up of the Lord. Behold, the name of the Lord comes from afar, burning with his anger, and in thick rising smoke. The Hebrew there is a little bit iffy, so you'll see different translations of that phrase. His lips are full of fury, and his tongue is like a devouring fire. His breath or spirit, that's ruach in Hebrew, his breath or his spirit is like an overflowing stream that reaches up to the neck to sift the nations with the sieve of destruction and to place on the jaws of the peoples a bridle that leads astray. This morning I was reading through this and just kind of chuckling to myself because we're taught pretty early in school, I don't know what grade this is, to not mix metaphors. The Bible's like, oh, you ain't seen nothing yet. You want to talk about mixing metaphors. I got breath that's like a stream. It's about to drown somebody. And at the same time, I got this sieve, and I'm sifting the nations. And while I'm at that, I got a bridle I'm going to put into the jaws of these people that are described sort of as a horse or as a donkey, I suppose, if they have a bridle, and I'm gonna lead them astray. And I'm gonna do it all in one verse. So it's like this piling up of metaphors that you have all over the scriptures.
My mom, I don't know if this is mixing metaphors, but we give her a hard time about it, and have for I don't know, I guess 30 years now. Because there was one time where me and my brother wanted to do something. I can't even remember what we wanted to do, and my mom said, "Oh, you think that's just going to be a walk in the cake, huh?" We were like, "What?" To this day, we say it to her.
Yeah.
Are you trying to say piece of cake or walk in the park? What are you doing? What are you talking about? What is this walk in the cake?
Your mom was actually being very prophetic. She was mixing metaphors there, just like Isaiah does.
I mean, she used to do all kinds of things. I mean, like that. One time we wanted to do something, and we were like, Eric's going. And she's like, I don't care if the man on the moon's going. We're like, what?
Got to have a collection. Got to put a book together. Momisms, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, hey, it's very very biblical to do this sort of thing.
Yeah. Well, one thing is for sure: the Assyrians, this is not going to be a walk in the cake.
It's not going to be a walk in the cake.
Not going to be, definitely. So we start out here with a personification of God's name, which is kind of a cool thing that you see in a lot of different places, a lot of different ways in the Old Testament. We've seen examples of where wisdom is personified, and the glory is personified. I think it was just this morning. It was this morning. I was reading the opening chapters of Ezekiel, and he talks about the glory of the Lord was standing there. So it's this personification of God's glory.
Sounds like Jesus.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's what I was about to say, that all these personifications, whether it's the name or the glory or the power or wisdom or whatever it might be, yeah, there's a great ways of talking about Christ in the Old Testament. So here you have God's name coming from afar. So his name's going to show up, and he's not happy. He's burning with anger, got smoke, and everything about his speech or his organs of speech is focused on. You got his lips, well, they're full of fury. You got his tongue, well, that's like a devouring fire. And you got his breath or his spirit, and that's like an overflowing stream that's going to spill forth, and it's going to go up to the neck of the nations. And then you have the other metaphors, a sieve of destruction, and you have a bridle in the mouth of the jaws of the people. Now, at this point, we don't know who these people are, but we're going to learn in just a few more verses. It's the Assyrians. So God's going to show up. He's going to rescue his people, and he's going to do this in a typical Old Testament God sort of way, where you got storms, you got water images, you've got fire images, and the end result, of course, is going to be that his people will be saved. Well, this is going to lead into verse 29, and this is verse 29 and following fits really well. It's kind of a mix too, but it fits really well with what's been set up, because we're going to have Passover images in verse 29, like a song in the night and a holy feast being kept. Well, what happened at Passover? Well, God rescued his people from the Egyptians, this great act of salvation. Well, now God is going to rescue his people again, not from the Egyptians, but from the Assyrians. It's going to be a Passover kind of event. So I'm going to read 29 just all the way through the end of the chapter, which is verse 33. You shall have a song as in the night, when the holy feast is kept, in gladness of heart, as when one sets out to the sound of the flute, to go to the mountain of the Lord, to the rock of Israel. And the Lord will cause his majestic voice to be heard, and the descending blow of his arm to be seen, in furious anger and a flame of devouring fire, with a cloudburst and storm and hailstones. The Assyrians, here we are, mentioning them by name finally, the Assyrians will be terror-stricken at the voice of the Lord when he strikes with his rod, and every stroke of the appointed staff that the Lord lays on them will be to the sound of tambourines and lyres, which is kind of a wild thing. God smiting these people, and you got like tambourines and lyres playing in the background with God's people rejoicing. Battling with brandished arm, he will fight with them. The ESV has a burning place. I'll talk about that in a minute, but I think we'd be better off just translating that as Topheth, which was a place of idolatry outside of Jerusalem, where a lot of the child sacrifice took place. So I think that's what's really in the background here. Isaiah uses a slightly different spelling, but probably a lot of translations actually do have Topheth here. A burning place for Topheth. What about it? It has long been prepared. Indeed, for the king it is made ready. Its pyre made deep and wide with fire and wood in abundance. The breath of the Lord, like a stream of sulfur, kindles it. Man, I mean, I know this is the Bible, so it's always impressive, but this is like even more impressive than usual. You got some very graphic images that are used to describe the destruction. You got Passover kind of language that's woven into this. You got the people of God rejoicing at the same time that the enemies of the people of God are destroyed. And who's doing all the doing? Well, it's all God. And it's he kind of goes back and forth between the physical image of his arm, right? You got the descending blow of his arm. You got his brandished arm. He's got the rod in his hand, and he's striking. At the same time, though, you've got an emphasis on his voice. So you got the voice of the Lord doing this. And this actually fits really well with images we have elsewhere in the Bible where you have God's speech likened to a rod, like the rod of his mouth, where God's word, his speech, is doing the thing which is described in very physical kinds of ways. Or, Revelation has the image of the double-edged sword coming out of the mouth of the Lord. What that really means is that what God is going to do, he's not going to physically pull out his rod and his sword and he's going to attack these people. He's simply going to speak. And when God speaks, he causes all of this destruction to take place against the enemies of God. And then at the same time, he causes the rescue of his people.
Yeah, I mean, this is a very poetic and kind of vivid way of simply saying that God is going to show up, and this isn't going to be like, a struggle for him. I mean, this is not going to be a battle he hopes he can win. It's the way it is all the time, which is that God shows up and it's over, right? I mean, God shows up, says some stuff, and that's it. That's the end of it. And the reason you know that this battle is won easily is God is basically saying that. So you guys are going to be like singing your song in the night while I just do all the work, and it's easy work. I'm gonna make quick work of this whole thing. You guys, you sing your song, I'll lay everything to waste. There you go.
Yeah, and this fits historically. That's precisely what God did to the Assyrians. It was at night, and they were besieging the city of Jerusalem. God shows up, wipes out the army. Everybody wakes up in the morning. Well, the enemy is destroyed, and everybody was asleep. God did it. Same as at Passover. What are all the Israelites doing in Egypt? Are they helping God? They're out there with swords. They're killing all the firstborn of the Egyptians. No, they're like, don't even leave your house. Stay inside your house. Don't open the door. Eat your lamb. Eat your unleavened bread. Celebrate your Passover. Sing your songs. Whatever you're doing inside the house. But don't leave it, because I don't need your help. I'm going to take care of all this myself. And then when you wake up in the morning and you go outside, you'll see, I guess God did exactly what he said he was going to do.
Yeah, the saying, if you want something done right, you got to do it yourself, has never been like more true than when God's involved with his people, where he's like, all right, listen, like stay indoors or sing this song. I need this done right, which means you cannot help. Because anytime, whenever you try to help me, like I gotta fix that too.
Yeah. Your assistance just creates more work for me. So let me take care of all this myself. Yeah, so we start out with verse 27, which was the verse we began the podcast with. Start out with the name of the Lord coming from afar. And then we end the section with the breath of the Lord showing up. So you got God's breath, you have his name, he's coming, he's destroying, he's doing all the things that need to be done to take out the enemy. I think that's it. I can't think of anything else for those verses, so we will move on. Chapter 31, which is entitled, Woe to Those Who Go Down to Egypt. We've been hearing about this for a while. Of course, this is the political situation of the time. You've got, at least in this stage in history, later on, like much later on, decades later, the Egyptians will team up with the Assyrians because now the Babylonians are a threat. But at this point in history, the Israelites, the Judeans, the Egyptians, they're all trying to find ways in order to rescue themselves from the Assyrians. And so you have this historical situation where people from Judea are going down to Egypt and looking for help from, of all places, the very place they were once delivered from back in the days of the Exodus.
Yeah, it certainly is not as though God has not been telling them to not do this. Oh, right.
Yeah.
So this is like one of those chapters that comes that that's been hinted at over and over. It's like also don't go to Egypt. Right. Also, here's the thing that is gonna well up inside of you. It's this desire to go to Egypt. And don't do that. And you keep getting sort of these hints at it. And now he's going to say, I mean, I told you, really, really don't go there.
So now you get the woe, right? Yeah, you got all these warnings. Now you get the woe pronounced against you. Yeah, woe to those who go down to Egypt for help. In fact, we're going to see, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to read 3 verses, and in those 3 verses, 4 different times, you have the root for help that is going to be used. So listen for help or helpers. Woe to those who go down to Egypt for help and rely on horses, for which the Egyptians were famous, horses, who trust in chariots because they are many, and in horsemen because they are very strong. But, so you're looking for all this stuff, Egypt, horses, chariots, horsemen. But what are you not doing? But you do not look to the Holy One of Israel or consult the Lord. And yet he is wise and brings disaster. He does not call back his words, but will arise against the house of the evildoers and against the helpers of those who work iniquity. The Egyptians are man and not God, and the horses are flesh and not spirit. When the Lord stretches out his hand, the helper will stumble, and he who is helped will fall, and they will all perish together. I don't know. I think it's pretty clear that you shouldn't go down to Egypt. What do you think, Dan? Pretty obvious what's going to be the result of that.
It's the Lord is deeply offended when you go elsewhere for help. This is just obviously true. That he's like, you've spit in my face by going to somewhere else for help. And maybe you maybe understand this a little bit. If you were really good at something, and you have a child, and this is the imagery that the Bible uses. So these are God's children, and they keep going to other places to get help with this thing that no one's better at than you. Yeah.
Your dad's a mechanic, and you need your car fixed, and you take it to this shade tree mechanic who doesn't really know what he's doing, and your dad's like, what are you doing?
And he's told you over and over again, like, hey, that guy's a shyster. Like, don't go over there. Like, I'll fix it, no problem. And you're like, I don't know. I mean, yeah, every time in the past you have fixed it perfectly, but I just feel like I need to go try this other guy out.
Yeah, and your dad's a doctor, but you visit a quack. I mean, there's just, all kinds of examples like that.
In this text, you can see that God is very offended by this, and rightfully so.
Yeah, and rightfully so. Yeah, so they're looking for help in all the wrong places. So Egypt, their horses, their chariots. Of course, all this is military kind of language.
Imagine you're God, and you can just change everything with a word. And then the people that you want to save are like, yeah, but Egypt has horses. I mean, right?
Oh,
this
wow.
is what's going on here.
Yeah. God's like, sorry, I take that all back. I forgot that Egypt had horses.
But God, have you seen the chariots, though? Wait, have you seen the chariots?
Yeah, very impressive.
I saw the chariots when I covered them in water in the Red Sea. What are you talking about, the chariots?
Oh, those? Yeah, I have seen horses and chariots in Egypt before, yeah. In fact, you can go down to the bottom of the Red Sea. That's exactly where I put them back in the day. All right, so that's the opening 3 verses. Pretty clear that what's happening with the people of Jerusalem in Isaiah's day is they're looking in the wrong place, and in so doing, insulting God. Verse 4, going to continue this. For thus the Lord said to me, as a lion or a young lion growls over its prey. So I just pause here for a second. This word for growl is haga. And that is the Hebrew word for meditate, as I always like to point out when I'm talking about Hebrew meditation is never sitting in silence. Hebrew meditation is always speaking things, making noises. So Haggah is used for the growling of a lion or the cooing of a dove or the meditative speech of believers. So as a lion or a young lion growls over its prey, and when a band of shepherds is called out against him, he's not terrified by their shouting or daunted at their noise. So the Lord of hosts will come down to fight on Mount Zion and on its hill. Like birds hovering, here we go, a different metaphor now. Like birds hovering, so the Lord of hosts will protect Jerusalem. He will protect it and deliver it. He will spare and rescue it. That Hebrew verb for spare is our verb pasach, which is where we get Pesach, which is the Hebrew word for Passover. So just like God spared the Israelites by passing over their homes back in the days of Egypt, he is going to spare and rescue Jerusalem. Kind of a nice Egypt connection too, when we think about how the chapter began. So we last chapter we had some storm images for God showing up. Here we have some animal images for God. So he's like a lion or a young lion. It's got a little gazelle, and he's growling over it, and a bunch of shepherds show up and they start shouting at the lion. The lion is going to be unfazed by this. And God says, well, that's kind of the way I am. I'm not going to be scared. I'm going to come down to fight on Mount Zion and on its hill. And then he switches to the bird image. Birds hovering over their nest. So God is going to hover over Jerusalem to protect it and to deliver it. And then he wraps up with this Passover image of him passing over his people when he rescues them by destroying those who are against them.
Yeah, I mean, this is the fear of the Lord, to some degree, is predicated on or flows from the fact that God is afraid of nothing, right? So like, if you belong to this person who fears no things, you're like, oh, that's like, who's the scariest person you know? Like, I don't know, probably the guy who's not afraid of anyone or anything. And this is God. So God is like, I fear nothing. There's no situation that strikes terror in my heart. There's no circumstance that I'm questioning whether or not I can overcome it. This does not exist for me. That's kind of what he's saying here. And yet still you're like, yeah, but what about those chariots and horses?
Yeah, but those chariots and horses. There's a lot of Assyrians coming. So that's verses 4 and 5. Picking up here with 6. Turn to him from whom people have deeply revolted, O children of Israel. For in that day everyone shall cast away his idols of silver and his idols of gold, which your hands have made sinfully for you. And then I'll just wrap up the chapter with 8 and 9. And the Assyrian shall fall by a sword, not of man, and a sword not of man shall devour him. And he shall flee from the sword, and his young men shall be put to forced labor. His rock, that probably, it is the word for rock, but probably what is intended here is like a stronghold. In fact, I think that's the way the NIV and the King James translate this. His rock or his stronghold shall pass away in terror, and his officers desert the standard in panic, declares the Lord, whose fire is in Zion and whose furnace is in Jerusalem. So the people, as it starts out here in verse 6, the people of God have, the children of Israel have deeply revolted against God. So what do you do when you have deeply revolted against God? Where do you turn? Well, you turn back to God. That's the way this works. Yeah. When you have offended God, you don't run from God, you run to him. He's always the God who wants you to run to him when you hear a word of rebuke, a word of law. You don't run away and hide. You run toward the very one against whom against whom you have offended, because his mercy and grace are always greater than his speaking of judgment and punishment. So turn to him, from whom people have deeply revolted. And when you do that, we saw this, I think, in the last episode. So you turn to God, but you can't turn to God without also turning away from non-gods. So you turn to him, and when you do that, you throw away your idols of silver and your idols of gold, which your hands have sinfully made for you. So you turn to the unmade God, and in so doing, you also turn away from the man-made gods. And as this is going on, what's God going to do? He's going to take out the Assyrians. God's sword is going to devour them. Their young men could be put to forced labor. Everyone's going to run away. Their officers are going to desert the standard. Their strongholds are going to fall. And all of this, it wraps up with this fire in Zion and this furnace in Jerusalem. It points us to the fact that God is there, and he is going to, as it were, flare forth from Zion and Jerusalem to wipe out the Assyrians who have encircled the city.
This is the counterintuitive thing about God, is that normally, if you had rejected, offended, betrayed, abandoned, cheated on a person, and then you were in deep trouble, and you ask someone, what should I do? And they're like, have you thought about just returning to that person and trusting them for your salvation? You're like, yeah, well, no, I haven't considered that, because I've rejected that person and did all these terrible things, and I've deeply, deeply offended them. And so, in your life, you probably don't have a lot of examples of doing that, right? Of this person I've really sold out and made angry, so I think I'll go put all my trust in them. That's what I'm going to do. But this is exactly what you do with God. God is always telling you this, hey, you've deeply revolted against me, so you should. What you should probably do is, what we would say is, hey, you've deeply revolted and offended me, so get ready, because you're about to get it. Where God says, hey, you have deeply offended me and revolted and betrayed and abandoned me, so I would recommend you get back over here immediately. Which is the great thing about God, is he's always saying, you can always come back. That would be the best thing.
Yeah. And I'm sitting here trying to think of examples in life where that's happened, and they're very few. Very few. I mean, it's not impossible. If you think of, you've done something really bad against your parents, or maybe your spouse or one of your really, really close friends, whoever it might be, someone who really does love you, and you come back to them, and they meet you with open arms and forgiveness rather than what you expect. Well, that's God all the time. Yeah. And I think that's why, I think back in my own life, how many times I ran away from God because I knew I had deeply offended him. And so you think, well, I got to come up with some other option, right? I can hide from him. I can try and pretend that he doesn't exist. I can lead a life of rebellion, whatever it is. And God's all the time just standing there with open arms. He's like, yeah, you revolted against me, and I'm standing here waiting to receive you back and forgive you, because that's my very nature to do that.
Yeah, and the thing is that you get glimpses of that, like you were saying, in life. Like every once in a while, you might see a glimpse of that, and it does feel sort of otherworldly when you get it too, where you're like, that's not that's outside the norm, right? And the thing that. And I've said this a ton, I'm sure, even on this podcast. But it's in those moments when you experience that, or when you're the one doing that. I would say that those are the moments that a person is most like Christ, is when they're extending forgiveness and reconciliation and stuff. That's when you look the most like Jesus, because that's what he does. And of course ours is imperfect. And so one of the differences too is that when you betray someone in this life, maybe they're willing to give you a second chance, but you've got to build that trust up again and stuff. And you can do it, but it takes time and all of that. With God, there's just you go back and it's immediately as if it never happened. That's how he works.
Yeah. Even in the best case scenarios in human relationships, if I really do you wrong, Dan, and come back to you, and you shock me with this love and forgiveness. That's great. But if I do it again and again and again, well, you are going to draw the line at some point.
I'm gonna
we all would.
I'm gonna be
right?
like Peter. I'm gonna say like 7 times is surely enough. I mean, this guy.
Surely enough, yeah. None of the 77. But yeah, that's where God takes our human examples and he just blows them out of the water, because it doesn't matter how many times the prodigal goes into the far off country. Every time he comes back, there's going to be a party.
Yeah.
Every time he comes back, the father will run to meet him. Okay, so man, we are rolling. We covered. It was a short chapter. But,
I was about to say
it was 9 verses.
It wasn't. I mean, we're rolling, but we got to hand it a short one.
We finished a chapter. We completed another chapter, and here we are stepping into Isaiah 32, which in our ESVs that we're looking at says, "A king will reign in righteousness." All right, so let's hear about this king. We've heard a lot in Isaiah about this coming king. He's described, especially in those early chapters, of course, a lot of messianic sections. We're going to hear more about him here. "Behold, a king will reign in righteousness, and princes will rule in justice. Each will be..." Now, I'm going to pause here just for a second, because this could be translated the way, it could be accurately translated as "each will be like a hiding place from the wind," meaning those we've just talked about, the king and princes. Now, the Hebrew here is "vahaya ish," which could be translated literally as "and a man will be like a hiding place from the wind," so on and so forth. So you can translate this where the Hebrew's talking about every individual who was just discussed, the king and the princes. You can also translate this in such a way where it's focusing upon an individual man, which is the way that I would go, where the one being described here is actually this king who is reigning in righteousness. So he, we might say, what's he going to be like? Well, he's going to be like a hiding place from the wind, a shelter from the storm. He's going to be like streams of water in a dry place, like the shade of a great rock in a weary land. And then he goes on to describe some of the effects of this. Then the eyes of those who see will not be closed, and the ears of those who hear will give attention. The heart of the hasty will understand and know, and the tongue of the stammerers will hasten to speak distinctly. So this is a one more example of how Isaiah is jumping ahead. He's looking ahead, and he's forecasting this coming day when a king, the Messianic king, Christ, is going to show up. And he's going to, of course, have those who are his followers, those who are his speaker, his nobility. And here they are described as princes who are going to act in imitation of him. Paul says, imitate me as I imitate Christ. So there's a sense in which Christians are little Christ. So a king is going to come. He's going to reign in righteousness. Princes are going to rule in justice. And he describes the effect of this coming king in terms of both protection and provision. So he is a hiding place from the wind, a shelter from the storm. He's going to protect you. And he's also going to provide what you need. So he's going to be like streams of water, like a shade of a great rock in a weary land. And it's going to affect people in their eyes, their ears, their heart, their tongue. Their eyes are going to stay open. Their ears are going to give attention. Their heart will understand and know. The tongue will speak distinctly. This is going to be continued a little bit later on in the chapter, where you have this description of a reversal of things, new creation kind of imagery. That's what Isaiah is getting at here. When the Messianic king shows up, he's going to protect, he's going to provide, and the eyes, the ears, the hearts, and the tongue of people are going to be able to see, to listen, to understand, to know, because he is there to disclose to us the wisdom of God.
Yeah, and you have like all these sort of reversals going on, right? And you're going to get more into that, where it's like, hey, and these things that seem like that they ought not be that way, those things will get flipped around, and so you won't have corrupt people in power and all this stuff. All of this changes.
Yeah, this is we'll see this again in Isaiah 35, but that's a chapter I often like to point people to, because in the Gospels, when John's in prison, his disciples show up and they say, "Hey, John sent us to ask, are you the coming one, or should we look for another?" And you would think that Jesus would have simply given them a straightforward answer and said, "Go back and tell John, yes, I am the coming one." Period. In the conversation.
Yeah.
But he doesn't. He says, "Go back and tell John what you've seen and what you've heard. The blind see, the lame walk, the deaf hear." All of this reversal is going on. Well, what Jesus is doing is he's describing the events that were prophesied in Isaiah 35. He's alluding to that directly, and he's basically saying, "Oh, go back and tell John the reversal of creation that Isaiah talked about in the Messianic kingdom. Well, that's what you see happening. So there's your answer. I am the coming one, and you can tell I am the coming one based upon my deeds, which conform perfectly to the very pattern of the Messianic kingdom that the prophets all talked about." So this is another example of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Now, the next few verses, 5 through 8, are describing the kind of the flip side of this, where you have fools and you have scoundrels, and the way they are is going to be exposed. So you've got a focus upon the good things that are going to happen, but also upon the bad things that are revealed for what they are. So 5 through 8. "The fool will no more be called noble, nor the scoundrel said to be honorable. For the fool speaks folly, and his heart is busy with iniquity, to practice ungodliness, to utter error concerning the Lord, to leave the craving of the hungry unsatisfied, and to deprive the thirsty of drink. As for the scoundrel, his devices are evil. He plans wicked schemes." The Hebrew that's used there for wicked schemes is, that's okay. It's an okay translation, but it often has kind of a connotation of sexual misconduct. So maybe lewd schemes or something like that. There's a connotation of something beside just kind of generic wickedness that's being plotted here. So he plans wicked schemes or lewd schemes to ruin the poor with lying words, even when the pleading of the needy is right. But he who is noble plans noble things, and on noble things he stands. So you might think of this in terms of the king shows up, and there's going to be a clear division of those who are noble and those who are fools or scoundrels. And the way this is revealed is in their thoughts, their intentions, their plans, as well as how they treat people. So you've got the scoundrel and you have the fool, leaving the hungry unsatisfied, depriving the thirsty of drink. They're ruining the lives of the poor with lying words. So there's going to be not only a reversal, but at the same time a revelation of these different ways of life that are characteristic of those who are part of the kingdom and those who are opposed to the kingdom.
Yeah, and you see this, in Jesus' day too. This is obviously you could be talking about all kinds of rulers here, but even the religious rulers of his day, where he talks about like, oh yeah, you've heaped up burdens, you've helped nobody, like you've created this system that oppresses people, and yeah, this is what he does. He goes, and what is the main problem that they have with him is that he's constantly exposing them for being frauds and like not undeserving of the honor and respect that they get. Yeah.
And the more I've read into the kind of the socioeconomic situation of the first century that led up to that was really building over time, the more I realize, man, the Sadducees and the whole priestly system talk about stuffing their pockets at the expense of everyone else. So I begin to hear the teaching of Jesus in a little bit different light, a little bit clearer light, just because of the way the poor were being oppressed and taken advantage of in all sorts of different ways by those who were the religious leadership of the day.
Well, this is why Jesus brings up the poor all the time. Why does he do that? Well, all the time he brings them up. Yeah, and like it's because those are the masses, and they're being basically manipulated and extorted by this religious leader class that is really, part of their job is to care for them and to help them, and they're doing anything but that. So
yeah.
well, all right. Well, we got to leave it there. We're
Yep.
out of time, so we'll leave it there. We will get back into it next episode. Finish out 32. Chad, I will see you then.
All right. See you then.